school support for desperate families with kids who need more help, and students crippled by costs of paying back loans once they leave. Some graduates are paying twice the rate of inflation, and many people think the student finance system can't go on. Well, problems on the England's head teacher's desk. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, is with us this morning to talk about her plans to shake up education. And her opposite number, Laura Trott, is here for the Tories too, with her proposals for student debt. And it is 4 long years since Putin's tanks rolled into Ukraine. We go back in time with Boris Johnson and Admiral Sir Tony Radakin, the Prime Minister and the head of the military back then. Is it time for Western troops to go in?
Why not do it now? There's no logical reason that I can see why we shouldn't send some peaceful ground forces there to show our support.
Morning, and our team at the desk for the next hour: Geordie Greig, the Editor-in-Chief of the Independent; Joanne Thomas, the General Secretary of USDAW, the Shop Workers Union; and Rev Richard Coles, broadcaster, writer and priest. Welcome to the three of you. Let's start by looking at what is making the news this morning, and it is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor that dominates again. The Mail on Sunday claims the King was warned about his brother's secret deals. The Sunday Mirror asks those big questions: who knew what and when? The Sunday Times and the Sunday Telegraph are posing other questions about Andrew's use of police protection officers and private jets. The Sunday Times also says NATO officials are pushing the government to cough up more cash for defence. We'll touch on that later. And the Conservatives are generating some news this morning on the front of the Telegraph with a plan to cut interest on student loans. And Geordie's paper, The Independent, on Sunday has a special report to mark 4 years since the start of the Ukraine conflict. Now, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor all over the front pages again. Richard, you're something of a royal watcher. How damaging do you think this is for the monarchy?
I think it's extremely damaging. I mean, we've had scandals before in the royal family, but I think what's really significant about this one is that it shakes confidence, it shakes our trust, it shakes our belief in the monarchy as an institution. And if it can't sustain that, then I think it's in really serious trouble. Because there's another serious problem here. If you were the Prince and Princess of Wales, you'd be looking at your kids and thinking, what lies in store for you if you step into this, what seems to be a massively dysfunctional organisation? I think the whole thing seems to be very seriously at question at the moment.
Geordie, you've written a lot about the royal family. You're very knowledgeable on this subject. Do you think it's that bad? It is a real pivotal moment for the whole institution.
It's damaging. I mean, one thing's clear from this. If Andrew was ever to reach the position of being king, it would be the easiest moment for Britain to become a republic. I think they would rather have the humblest footman adorn that crown on his head than him, and that's clear. And so there will be, I'm sure, a move in Parliament to move him. But let's just put this in a context. You know, we've read in the last few days there are historic comparisons to Queen Victoria and others when the royal family's been at historic lows. They will get through this. Interestingly, the tour in America, with Charles about to go to, I think is an opportunity for the royal family to shine through. We'll see the comparison between the venality and bovine nature of Prince Andrew and the dignity and the confidence and the diplomatic skills which Charles brings.
It's very difficult, though, isn't it? I mean, this morning, again, we've seen police go into Royal Lodge in Windsor. We've just seen some pictures of them carrying out more searches. Joanne, some MPs are now calling for an inquiry so that the public can see everything that happened, including use of taxpayers' cash, whether that's police protection officers or using jets. Do you think that is a good idea?
I think, first of all, before I say anything, we always have to recognise and respect the real victims in this situation. And, of course, you know, just to follow on with what Richard said, I think it's really important that the public have trust and confidence in the monarchy for them to succeed. I think, of course, we'll have to wait for, you know, what is deriving from the you know, the police investigation, and I think, you know, if that does produce something that is of a serious consequence, then of course I think politicians will want to get involved and maybe make some political decisions around this, but I think we have to wait till we get to that point first of all. But I think we have to just make sure that we come back to the real issue, which is the victims around this as well.
And there are so many strands here too.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, it's interesting that the justice is being seen in the UK, not in America. And I think with with the King going there, that will again highlight the question: why is justice being seen in the UK and not in the US?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. All three of you will be back with you a bit later in the programme. Now, everyone agrees that it is a mess. There is not always enough help for kids who need extra support at school. The system can take too long for parents, often getting caught up in expensive legal tangles. And the bill for the taxpayer for special needs education is going up and up and up. That story is familiar right round the UK. But this week, after a long wait, the government will reveal the changes it wants to make in England. Given what is at stake, a lot of parents are worried and have been in touch with us with their anxieties about what might come next.
Hello, I'm Hannah Luxford. We have an EHCP for our 13-year-old son. We battled for 18 months via tribunal, despite the fact he'd been out of education for almost a year due to his severe anxiety. The system is deeply flawed. It's adversarial, it's combative, and it works against families instead of with them. But I'd do it again because it secured us an EHCP, which is a legally binding plan, and allowed us to find the right provision for him that could meet his needs. Key for parents is properly funded specialist provision.
Hi Bridget, my name is Sarah Greaves and I am the mum of 3 children who have additional needs. One is now educated at home. He was doing fine at primary school and followed his siblings to a mainstream secondary school. 6 months into that experience, he suffered severe autistic burnout. During the sort of 18 months it took us to get his education and healthcare plan, it felt like we were on the worst game show ever. It felt like there was a never-ending level. There was always something else that had to happen. So my question to you would be, how are these children going to be reintegrated into mainstream when they are so traumatised by it?
Hi, my name's Hannah Bissell and I'm the parent of a 9-year-old diagnosed autistic child with an EHCP. I have huge concerns regarding reassessing EHCPs at secondary school level. Firstly, because this is yet another hoop that oftentimes exhausted and sometimes broken SEND parents will have to jump through. And secondly, because we've been told that some students with EHCPs will lose that support. However you frame this will add more stress to SEND families and essentially defund the SEND system.
Well, the Education Secretary is with us, and this is such a vital issue for many families. We really want to understand your overall approach. But before we go any further, will any children who currently receive support lose it under your proposals?
Hello, good morning. So what I'm going to be setting out tomorrow is both the school's white paper and also the SEND consultation document that will set out our vision, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver a better system for children, including those with SEND. And I want to be absolutely crystal clear and to give reassurance to parents who, as we've just heard, I know are really worried. And I've travelled the length of the country, I've spoken to so many parents. This is about better support earlier for children, and EHCPs will have an important role to play in the new system. This is going to be a decade-long transformation, a decade-long reform that will be carefully managed, done with parents, with better outcomes for children right at the heart. And I'll be publishing all of the full detail tomorrow. And I hope that when parents read that and review that, they will see that this is all about investing now to deliver a transformed system so that where we are at the moment and where we get to, totally unrecognisable.
But on that specific point, will any children in England who currently receive support at school lose it?
So this is not about removing support. This is about improving support for children. And forgive me, I will set out all of the full detail tomorrow. I'm not seeking to be difficult about this, but this is a complex area. And the assurance I can give to parents is that under the new system, more children will receive support, but they'll receive it more quickly. They'll receive it when they need it and where they need it. And parents won't have to fight so hard to get support through an EHCP, because what parents tell me is that the EHCP has become the means by which, that route into the system, by which they get the support their children need. They shouldn't have to go through that. They shouldn't have to fight. And the investment, further investment that I will announce tomorrow will make very clear to parents how it's going to be a much improved system with a focus on outcomes for children.
And the EHCP, for people who aren't familiar with the jargon, is the legal document that parents sometimes have to fight more than a year for, that gives their kid a right to that extra support. But forgive me, I know that all the details won't come out till tomorrow, but on that really important principle, we just heard parents really worried about it. Will any child who currently receives support lose it under your proposals?
We are not going to be taking away effective support from children. And what I'll be setting out tomorrow is a decade-long, very careful transition from the system that we have, which everyone recognises isn't working. We've just heard it here.
Support and effective support. But that's not the same as saying that no child who receives support won't lose it.
No, children will be reviewed in terms of their needs assessed. That should be happening at the moment. We're meant to have a system where every year an EHCP is reviewed. That doesn't always happen, and where it doesn't always work well. But what parents will see when we set out our vision tomorrow is a system where, if, for example, your child needs speech and language support, the school will be better able to provide that than is the case right now, because parents don't go into this thinking they want to fight so hard for this. And equally, with all of the brilliant people who go in to work with children, whether that's health professionals or education staff, they don't want to spend their time filling out forms, sending emails, arguing through this adversarial, bureaucratic system. We will transform it so that the support children need is there more quickly. And this will be about meeting now. Children, we will, yes, as a careful and phased transition from one system into the next. But this is a decade-long shift. Now, some people might say, actually do this more quickly. But I think it's important we get that right. And I've heard loud and clear from parents both the role of EHCPs, the importance of there being routes to challenge decisions where decisions aren't right or where they feel their child's interests are not being met. But I do think we have to come back to this fundamental point, which is the current system that we have, which came about through the 2014 reforms of the then government, which were well-intentioned. They were designed to put in place a system of support for children that would work, has meant that if children are struggling and parents want to get help for their children or schools identify a need, the only way to get that is through the EHCP, and that's got to change.
Everybody agrees that it's a mess. You know, occasionally in politics you get something everybody agrees on, but you want to give schools a bigger role, to give help earlier on by having individual support plans, as they'll be called in schools. But will those plans, if schools decide and what kind of support a kid should get, will those plans give families a legal right to that support?
There'll be a statutory underpinning, and this will be set out. This will mean that there are clear routes and a clear principles set out in statute that will guide all of this. I can't, I'm afraid, give you all of the detail. It will be published tomorrow. But what parents will see...
Parents want to know if they're going to have the legal right, as they do now, to make sure their child gets the support they need.
More children will get support under the new system than under the system that we have at the moment. It will be more tailored, it will be more targeted, and there will be a clear transition between different, I'm not just talking about a transition from one system to the next, but actually a better transition when children move from primary to secondary. As we just heard there, that's often a key moment where things go wrong, where children struggle, and that will be a big and important area that we're taking on.
And some parents are worried that at that move, that's exactly when you will reassess children going from primary to secondary, and some kids might lose their support just at that vital moment of transition. Is that what you're planning?
So what we're doing right now is investing up front ahead of any change to the system, because it's not just a question of things not working as they should at the moment. It's that it's fundamentally just a system that is not geared up to provide early support. So just take, for example, USDAW under the last Labour government.
Hang on. I'm asking you a specific question about whether or not children are going to be reassessed between primary and secondary school. We're not debating what Labour did, pretty much 20 years ago.
It is materially relevant because it's the shape of the system that we have. So I'll set out all of the detail tomorrow, which parents can read, and I think will be really reassured about the time and the care we're taking. The point about SureStart is that we know if we support families when children are young, we get better outcomes and needs don't escalate.
And everybody would agree with that. But every politician who sat in that chair says that early intervention is a key.
Yes, but then they pull it away what we've seen over the last decade is that support that should be available when children are 3, 4 and 5 being stripped away. So we're investing in early years education. We're investing in Best Start family hubs. We're lifting the 2-child limit to tackle child poverty. That is our upfront investment alongside the capital to create specialist places and alongside the extra investment that I'll be setting out tomorrow that will transform the system and will transform support for children and families. Totally different from where we are right now.
And everybody wants them. Everybody thinks this system needs to be better, and it is a big and complicated system. Do you hope to save money by doing this?
No, we're spending more money and we'll continue to spend more money both around schools and send both together. We are going to spend more money delivering better outcomes for children. What we will be doing, however, is taking action where that money is not being well spent.
This bill has been going up and up and up and up and up, and there is a projected shortfall of about £6 billion in this system. So you're just going to keep spending more and more money?
I'll come back directly to that point about the projection, but we will be spending more because we do believe it's important to invest in our children. But what we're doing is spending a lot of that money incredibly badly. We can't continue as we are, spending vast sums of money on poor quality independent special school provision, which is fueling the profits of private equity. There are some brilliant providers out there, brilliant charities and others who run specialist provision, but there's a lot of provision out there that doesn't deliver good outcomes for children, is costing an absolute fortune, and where we are all to help private equity, by the way, and where we're sending kids on long taxi journeys far from home. The outcomes for children who have the right support within mainstream schools, including specialist support within mainstream, their outcomes are better.
But,
and their outcomes are better in educational terms. Their outcomes are better into adulthood. They're more likely to get into education, employment or training and have fulfilling lives as adults. And this is about, yes, the support we give our children as they are children through the school system, but how we want them to thrive as adults, how we see their place in the world, how we include children with additional needs, with special educational needs and disabilities, and how we have a school system that has that at the heart, not something that's seen as separate or an add-on. And that's part of the reason that we've ended up in this mess.
But do you think, you've said that some companies are trying to profiteer out of this and that should be rooted out of the system, but do you think, as one government source told one of the newspapers, that pushy parents are gaming the system?
I think parents are doing what is best for their children in a very, very difficult environment.
The government source accused pushy parents of gaming the system.
Well, I'm a parent. I want the best for my kids. I want the best for all children in our country. And I don't blame parents for seeking to get what their children need. But we've made it too hard for parents. I mean, I've spoken to so many parents through the time we've taken to bring forward these reforms, to listen to parents, to charities, to children's groups and others. And what I've heard from them loud and clear is that it's just got too hard and difficult. And we will make it better. And I hope that when parents can read all of the full documents and everything tomorrow, they will see what they have shared with us has been taken forward. Our reforms are in much better shape because of the work they've done with us.
We'll read and listen very carefully in the next 24 hours, and you'll be setting that out in fuller detail to Parliament. Part of your plans this week, though, are also about trying to close the gap between how poorer kids do at school compared with their peers. And you want to give more money to schools where kids have families who are earning less. But if they're the winners, who are the losers?
So we're going to consult on this to get it right. But what we've seen is that we're spending about £8 billion a year on support for children from less well-off backgrounds through quite a blunt measure around free school meals. What that doesn't do is address some of the really deep-seated inequalities that we see. So, for example, we know if children are in a low-income family and on free school meals for their whole time at school, their outcomes are far worse than someone who might have been on free school meals for a period.
Everyone can hear you want to give more money to the kids whose families are having the hardest time, but who's going to lose then? So where's that money going to come from?
Well, we're investing more into the system. We're investing more into the pupil premium and much more besides. So this is not... Look, the reforms that we're setting out, of course, money is materially relevant to what you seek to deliver. But even if money were no object, we would need to make these changes happen because the system isn't working. But there is upfront investment. There will continue to be more investment for every year of this Parliament. And we will shape the system so it better caters for children who do have a range of needs. So we quite rightly talk about what children with special educational needs and disabilities require, and we've got to get that right. But it is usual and normal that lots of children at some point in their time at school will face challenges, will face difficulties, and they need to be stretched to, they need to be pushed. So high standards for all children excellence for every child. That has to be at the heart of everything we do. And I am really ambitious for children from less well-off backgrounds. Why should the place you're born or the family you're born into determine what you go on to achieve in life? We're going to shift that. We are going to break that link and make sure that it's your hard work and your talent, not your background, that determines what you achieve in life. So we've got a really big disadvantage gap. You know, one that has been
and you're going to explain more about how you're going to do that tomorrow and then consult on the plans this year. So we'll talk about it in the months to come, I'm sure, again. Let's then look at the other end of the education system, though, because some graduates who've come out of university are really struggling paying back their debts. One of our viewers, Sarah, who's 31, has been in touch. She said, this is not what we signed up for. The goalposts have changed. People are really, really struggling. She says, we are just becoming financially savvy enough to understand what the government have done and are doing to our generation. This is not a tolerable situation, is it, when some graduates are paying twice the rate of inflation?
Look, it is really difficult. And
you've made it harder.
No, it is really difficult. And we will continue to keep under review the ways in which we can make life better for graduates, including through this system. But I would just say that this is not a system that we designed. It's not a system I designed. It's a system that was in operation until 2023. So it was the last government who now claim they want to improve this system, but delivered the very system they now complain about.
But you could change it.
And
will you look to change it?
We will, of course, I'll keep looking at this. And it's part of the reason. I do want a fairer system for students and for graduates. It's why I've committed to bringing back maintenance grants for less well-off students going into university. But on this, I understand this specific point about the Plan 2 student loans, but it's why alongside considering how we might be able to make that fairer, of course we will continue to do that. But how alongside that, you know, the graduates who are now in their 30s, we're supporting them with support, you know, with help around expanding childcare, freezing rail fares, investment in housing. All of that has to be taken together, as well as rightly
but this is
considering
a
the system that we
inherit. The incredible cost of paying back student debt at rates that one of our viewers described as like loan sharking. I mean, you say you're going to look at it. Are you actually open to changing the system?
Look, I will look at it. Of course I will. The reality is that we inherited a system, and the Conservatives left behind this system, the system they're now complaining about, that does have problems. It does. But there are also problems when you seek to make changes happen.
The Chancellor changed the thresholds. So the Chancellor froze the thresholds, which has made this situation more acute. This is not somehow nothing to do with you as a government.
The threshold is going up this year, so students will be paying less. In years to come, yes, it will be frozen. But this is a system that developed over many, many years, came in 2012-13, was not a system that we designed. There are flaws in that system. I'd be the first to admit it. But it is galling that the very people who designed, implemented and delivered that system are now complaining about the fundamental problems that they see within it. And alongside that, I would add, are now saying that university is not for some young people. Always coming from people, by the way, who went and had the benefits of university education and want to deny it to other young people. University is not the only,
we'll talk to Laura Trott from the Conservatives about in a few seconds.
And I want to see better apprenticeship routes, and we're delivering more apprenticeships, better options for young people. But I'm not in the business of pulling up the drawbridge behind me and saying to other young people who are ambitious, who want a chance to go to university, that they're going on to study on poor quality courses. I would ask the Conservatives which universities are going to close,
but I've got a couple
which
more
courses are low value, make it real. Don't just get into the rhetoric, but make it real about who it would actually involve.
And I want to ask you, as the Secretary of State, a couple more questions briefly. It is the 4th anniversary of the conflict in Ukraine this week. The former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has said that non-combat troops should go to safe areas of Ukraine to show resolve to the Kremlin. Why not do that?
Well, unfortunately, there are no safe areas in Ukraine. That's the reality of where we are at the moment. And we have committed to putting British troops on the ground when we secure that enduring peace, playing our full part in making sure that it is upheld. There has been broad cross-party agreement on the need to get behind the brave Ukrainian people and their government. That was something that the Conservatives began and we have continued. And we're providing more support to Ukraine. We will continue to do that. And we, together with the French and the coalition of the willing, will make sure that when that deal is secured, and we all hope and pray it comes quickly, because the loss of life and the impact on the Ukrainian people is intolerable. When it happens, we will play our full part in upholding that peace.
And yes or no, are you going to remove Andrew Mountbatten Windsor from the line of succession?
All options are open, yes. but we have to let the police investigation run its course before any announcements are made.
OK, Bridget Phillipson, it's a big few days for you, so we appreciate you coming in to speak to us in the studio this morning. Well, that system of student finance is under great strain. Opposition parties and graduates are all starting to pile into this debate, saying that the current system just cannot last. The Liberal Democrats have today said they want to write off debt after a decade for doctors, nurses and teachers, as well as reducing interest rates. And the Conservatives, as we've said, are spelling out what they call a new deal for young people. Sounds a bit New Labour, doesn't it? They're promising a cut in interest rates on student loans that were taken out between 2012 and 2023 in England. Well, Laura Trott from the Conservatives is here, as promised. Let's start with student finance then. You say your cap interest on the debt, so it would never be higher than inflation, but you would pay for it by fewer people going to university.
Yes, we would.
Cutting off opportunity for people?
No, not cutting off opportunity, the opposite, actually. What we're announcing today is a new deal for young people because we have, at the moment, the highest rate of youth unemployment in Europe for the first time ever. We have graduates who are leaving university who can't get a job. And we've got graduates who are repaying their loans or trying to and just seeing debt mounting up. So we desperately need to fix this system. So we're putting forward a plan today which will do just that. And it's got 3 bits to it. Firstly, as you say, we're going to stop the government funding dead-end university courses. Because
but
we
which
know,
courses are dead-end university courses?
Because we know the IFS says that for 30% of young people going to university, it has negative returns for them. That is not OK. It's bad for them, and it's also bad for the public because we spend about £8 billion a year funding these courses.
But which courses would you see come to an end then?
So what we would do is we'd take up about 100,000 of those. We would do it on the base. It is a lot of people, but we're spending the money on alleviating the debt issue for lots of people out there and also increasing apprenticeships. So there's a real choice where it comes to 18, whether you go to university, you have a brilliant apprenticeship, or you go out to work.
But which courses would you get rid of? I mean, if you're going to say to 100,000 young people that there won't be places for them at university, don't they deserve to know which places you think aren't worth it?
So we have some amazing data now. It's called the LEO data, which is the longitudinal educational outcomes data, and it shows us which courses are the ones that aren't delivering for young people.
Which ones?
So we'd have a look at them when we came in. We'll look at the returns that they're giving young people. Creative arts courses, for example, 75% of the loans that are given out on those are not paid back. So I'm not going to come on here and say that this is not difficult, but I think it's the right thing for young people. It would mean that instead of going into one of these university courses, which has a negative outcome for them, they could go into an amazing apprenticeship where they're going to come out with no debt whatsoever and they're going to come out with great job prospects.
So if
I
you'd
think
have
that is a better trade.
So you'd have fewer creative arts courses. Would you be relaxed if some universities ended up closing as a result of these changes?
Well, universities are often involved in apprenticeships, so level 7 apprenticeships, for example. And it does mean that they're going to have to justify themselves for young people because, I'm sorry, they are not delivering in some cases for young people at the moment.
But
they go to university,
then if they
don't have the job prospects, they have huge amounts of debt. So we'd have to look at the effect on the whole system. But I refuse to keep funding degree courses which are not delivering for young people, not giving them the job prospects. And this is a real choice. This is a choice that we're setting out today.
It's a big political choice, but if the consequence of that meant that some universities went under, would that be worthwhile? Would that be worth it to make the change that you want to see?
I reject that as a proposition because
because universities are already under a lot of financial pressure in many cases, and if you would want to shut some courses, for some of them, that might mean that they can't make ends meet and they go under. So if that was the logical consequence, would you be relaxed about that happening?
But as I said, universities are often involved in apprenticeships, which is something that we are going to expand quite dramatically for 18 to 21, because we know that the apprenticeships for that number, for those age groups at the moment, is going down, even as overall apprenticeships are going up.
But that's not an answer to the question. If you want to take out 100,000 university places for reasons that you have explained, that some people listening might think are perfectly legitimate, if that meant some universities going under, would you be relaxed about that?
I wouldn't be relaxed about it.
You would let it happen?
There is a shift that needs to happen in the system.
Let's then come to the government's plans for kids with special needs in England. Do you think that too many kids get extra support who don't actually need it?
No, I don't. I think that there has clearly been an increase in need, which is happening in schools. And you just have to visit any school to see that. And I think that we want to be really constructive where it comes to this. But I do have some big concerns about what is being floated. Obviously, we'll see the detail tomorrow. For too many parents, as we saw in those clips that you ran earlier on, they've had to fight for the support. And the idea that they're going to be reassessed will be genuinely frightening. And I do worry about that.
In terms, though, of children being reviewed, given what a mess the system's in, isn't it the right thing, actually, to say we've got to look at every case?
It's been way too hard for many parents to get that support. But once that support is in place, for many young people, that has actually been very effective. So it's important that that is not taken away. And the stress that this system has meant for so many parents up and down the country, they've been worried for about a year now because there was a leak that EHCPs were going to be taken away. Now we've got the Education Secretary on here saying that they might be reviewed. I mean, it's just too much for parents. They need to just take away this anxiety. And we would absolutely oppose any support being withdrawn.
But it was on your watch, though, that the system got into such a dreadful mess.
Well, there's obviously been a huge increase in need. That's been obvious. And if you look back...
But that's
I read
to the system creaking and being in a terrible mess, families having to fight for a year, councils nearly always losing the cases when they end up in expensive tribunals. I mean, the whole system is a mess. It's not just that it's been an increase in demand. So do you admit it was on your watch that it got into this position?
Well, I read the 2009 Brian Lamb report, which says that the SEND system wasn't working. And I think the Education Secretary was right to say in her interview with you just now that the 2014 reforms were well-intentioned. There's obviously issues within the system, and that's why I say I want to be constructive where it comes to this. I want to have better outcomes for parents, but I don't want more anxiety.
Everyone will be listening very carefully tomorrow. Just finally, your former leader, Boris Johnson, has told us this morning, we're going to hear it in a few minutes, that non-combat troops should be sent to Ukraine now. Do you agree with that?
Boris has got a very proud history where it comes to Ukraine. I think this is something that the government should look at as part of the work that they're doing, but we are working very much cross-party on this. And I was pleased to see the Education Secretary say that she wants more support to go to Ukraine.
OK. Laura Trott, Shadow Education Secretary, thanks very much indeed for coming in. A big few days in education in England, but we know that lots of you have got concerns about this issue right around the UK. So do let us know what you think. Email us kuenssberg@bbc.co.uk. If you are social media inclined, you can use the hashtag BBC Laura K, and you can drop us a WhatsApp too, 08000 282 161. That number is there for you on the screen. Well then, what did our panel make of what our politicians had to say? Geordie, listening to Bridget Phillipson, do you think she's going to be able to get these plans past Labour MPs when lots of them have got inboxes pouring with messages from families desperately worried about this situation?
Well, the Education Secretary speaks passionately about trying to, her desire to improve SEND children for those with special needs. But we all know this is really about money. And you were hinting at that and trying to prod on that. And that is correct. It's 15 billion a year. It's doubled in 5 years. It's fair enough. But can she say that these children, vulnerable children, when the welfare cuts were stopped, is she really going to guarantee that these children are not going to be let without the necessary help? And that is a crucial question for Labour MPs who will be circling this. Are we going to see another U-turn? Is she concerned that this will be another moment, like Liz Kendall found, when the minister went forward, went public, but then when it was presented in Parliament, the Prime Minister pulled the rug?
Joanne,
will we see another U-turn?
We know, Joanne, don't we, that Bridget Phillipson and her team have been trying very hard already with backbenchers to try to get them on board for these changes and to try and say it's all going to be OK. But she did admit that children will be reviewed, to use her word. How difficult is this balance politically, do you think?
Well, first of all, I do really think we need reform in this area. The USDAW members that I speak to regularly often bring up this subject, and just have masses of frustration around how it currently sits. Indeed, I've got a very close friend who has a child that needs extra support in school, and it is very, very stressful. One of the things that I liked hearing from Bridget is the fact that she's making reference to parents all the time. And I think, of course, we need to listen to the medical professions and the schools, but I really think it's the parents that need to be at the heart of this decision making, and I think that really needs to be sort of thread through all of the political decision making. And I think also business need to be more involved with this as well, because when children are growing up, and Bridget made reference to this, actually going into the world of work, I think there could be more support in that area as well, and just making sure that this is a system that works for the children. And I've got no doubt that obviously that's what Labour will want to deliver.
Do you think, though, that your members listening to her this morning, many of whom will be parents going through this situation, will have been reassured by what she was trying to say?
I think we'll have to see what's in the white paper, of course. I think when she did make reference to reviews happening, she did clearly state that they're already happening. So there's not necessarily going to be any change there. But I'd like to see from the white paper, obviously, all of the assurances, you know, that Bridget said that is, you know, there for parents to have any fears to be put to bed, because I think this, again, is something that they're going to be really focused on to make sure that it is better for their children.
And that's the crux, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can she guarantee that no child who has special needs provisions will have their help cut?
And she didn't quite say that this morning.
she
She
didn't.
did admit that children will be reviewed. Richard, we then went on to student debt. Now, you're the Chancellor of Northampton University, one of your many different interesting jobs that you do. Do you think the government will have to budge on student loans in the end?
I think it's going to have to. I think it's going to particularly do something about the interest rates people are paying back on loans. I think the system isn't fit for purpose. And, you know, you can argue forever about who's responsible for that. But I think
as they both tried to do.
Well, and also unintended consequences. I actually thought that Michael Gove's reforms were actually quite impressive in lots of ways. But, of course, unintended consequences produce the results that are unforeseeable. So I think they're going to have to look at that and figure it. I'm a bit mystified, actually, about a couple of things Bridget said. The first thing I'm mystified by is, why did we wait 18 months for an education white paper? Normally that comes along within 6 months of government taking power. And the other one is over-assessment. I think there's a bit of a red herring here, because EHCPs are assessed annually, and those who do the assessing have the discretion to remove that support if it doesn't meet the criteria. So I'm not sure why there's so much talk about this assessment as they go forward into secondary level, because I think that power already exists.
I think it does exist, but it doesn't always happen. I think in the sort of chaos of the system, it doesn't always actually take place.
But the anger over student fees, I think, is going to rise and rise and rise. We need a new contract between universities and students. We get less information from them than if you take out a mobile phone contract, and you end up with a £50,000 loan, which is like a huge weight on your shoulders. It's the equivalent of a mortgage. And should that be what people go into the work market and feel that they have that burden on them?
Joanne, this is all tricky political stuff, and you don't need me to remind you how much trouble your party has had. A couple of your union leader colleagues have been out there saying, actually, Keir Starmer's time is up. Both the Fire Brigades Union, your colleague from there sat in that seat, said that a couple of weeks ago. Another union leader came out not long ago. Are they right to do so?
I think trade union leaders, you know, have their own relationship with the Prime Minister, their own relationship with the government. I think what this country needs, though, is stability. You know, and I think what we don't want to see from any Prime Minister is just to quit when the going gets tough. I think, you know, there's such a big domestic and global agenda at the moment. You know, I want to see Keir Starmer concentrate and deliver on the manifesto commitments, which they are. You know, we're seeing lots of positive stuff. You know, when I'm out on the doorstep speaking to voters and speaking to my members in USDAW, we talk a lot about that, especially with the Employment Rights Act and some of the reforms that's coming from there.
But if you told him to pull his socks up, because I know there are things that you're passionate about in the manifesto, and you said rather diplomatically, union leaders all have their own relationship with the Prime Minister. You, of course, do too, and you're the chair of the sort of inner sanctum of union leaders, an organisation called Chulo, that is where you get together and talk politics. Have you told him he's got to do better?
I'll always make sure Labour deliver for our members and for the country, in particular workers. You know, we want an economy that delivers for workers. So I'll always be making sure that we put the best representation forward for that to be the case. And like I say, you know, for me, the proof is always in the pudding. It's a case of what is being delivered, particularly for workers. You know, having the likes of sick pay now delivered from day one, that's a 2 billion productivity boost. You know, that's come from the Employment Rights Act. Having a contract that reflects the hours that people work is just a big uplift for workers. They'll get access to decent mortgage rates, decent loans if they need it. That's been delivered from a Labour government. So I think we must concentrate on the positives and some of the really great initiatives that came through from Labour already.
Richard?
Well, I don't know, I feel about the government, but I feel about the monarchy and the Church of England. I kind of want it to succeed. I want to believe in it. But I think that delivery has been, well, they haven't had an easy time of it. I think Keir Starmer had a very torrid time of it. I think there is improvement. There's some encouraging economic news. I love the stuff that you did about employment rights, for example. New deal for renters. And also, I'm interested to see what's in the white paper, education white paper. But it's modest and it's slow. And it's small. And I'd love something a bit bolder. And I was impressed by Keir Starmer at the Munich Security Conference, because as I thought there, he did say, you did get the sense there was a vision behind this, something which knit it together, something you could get behind in a very uncertain world.
I think the foreign element of his policies has been impressive.
Yeah.
I think where people really want to see some change, they want to see some inspiration and some execution of policies and some explanation. Those three things. People want a narrative, people want hope, but they want to have a reassurance about authority. I think those things have been missing, and I think there is a chance for a reset. We do not want to have as many prime ministers as Italy. We want to have solid, sensible leadership going ahead.
Well, let's turn then to those foreign affairs, because it feels very strange and sad to say it, but this week will mark 4 long, bitter years since Russia's tanks rolled into Ukraine. Putin's invasion brought a full-blown conflict to our continent, raging now for almost as long as the First World War. Despite rounds of diplomatic talks, there is little sign that the Kremlin is interested in peace. Here, the two men who led Britain's response to the attack, the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, and the head of the armed forces back then, Admiral Sir Tony Radakin. I sat down with both of them on Friday to talk about what now, what next, and to go back in time to the early hours, the 24th of February, 2022.
Yes, this was about 4 a.m, maybe a bit earlier, from the National Security Advisor, Stephen Lovegrove, and he rang me to say that it was happening. I mean, we'd been expecting it really the night before. We'd all gone to bed thinking probably something was going to happen. And so I think I uttered some sort of expletives and then went downstairs and got on with it.
And so, Tony, you weren't surprised?
It was really clear it was going to happen. Yeah, at the tactical level, Russia was moving bloods up to their people on the border. They have mobile crematorium. You don't do that in an exercise. And then I got the call at maybe 3 in the morning. And if I'm honest, because it was it's almost like a relief. There's a calmness because it's happened, and okay, now what are we going to do about it? What is going to be the international response?
Other countries were more reluctant than you, and perhaps you as a pair were, to make a very strong statement in response to the invasion.
Remember at the Munich Security Conference, not long before the invasion, talking to the German delegation, and, you know, first of all, there was this sort of denial about whether it was actually going to happen, and which was shared bit a bit by the French and others, but also a sort of weird sense that maybe, just from a purely humanitarian perspective, it might be a better thing if Ukraine folded and if the war was over rapidly. And, you know, this was completely alien to my way of thinking and seemed to be totally wrong.
What about, Sir Tony, in this country and in Whitehall?
My recollection is we then had some debates maybe about 5 days before the invasion, which was, okay, how will we respond when this happens? Do we do a Crimea again, or do we respond more robustly? And then that was in the air, and then on the actual, the 7 o'clock Cobra, the Prime Minister then comes in. I think you were clear and categorical in terms of taking the decision that we were all with Ukraine.
I think my first call was to Volodymyr Zelensky. You know, I said to him, look, you know, the key thing is that you protect yourself, and you are the focus of resistance. If you go, then it'll be a disaster for Ukraine. You've got to be safe. Do you need to come somewhere else? Do you need to leave Kiev? And he said, absolutely not. We're staying. Just get us the weapons that we need. Get us the support that we need.
The expectation was that Kyiv might fall in a matter of days. And then this video emerged of Zelensky walking around an empty Kyiv with some of his colleagues.
I don't know if we thought Kyiv was going to fall within days. I think that was always up for debate and so on. But the images to me that were really striking was the battle over Hostomel airport just to the north of Kyiv, which we knew was key to Russia's plans, and the Ukrainians were magnificent. That was the image that I always remember, was of all that armour and the convoy that was stuck.
Do you think, though, that the UK and its Western allies were naive? Did they enable the invasion in the first place by allowing Crimea to be taken in 2014?
I do think that, and I think that the failure to do anything in Crimea in 2014 was tragic. I think that Putin was emboldened by Western failure in Syria to punish Assad for using chemical weapons. I think that Putin was further emboldened in 2022, in February 2022, by what he'd seen in Afghanistan, and a sort of general sense that the West was on the back foot. We could have solved this problem if we'd been clear about what Ukraine was. We'd continually said to them, you can join NATO and you're on the path to the West, but we never made good that promise. I think if we'd had clarity and simplicity about Ukraine, rather than endless fudge and obscurity, we could have saved that. We could have prevented that invasion.
Do you personally regret that? If the West in general had stood up and taken a stronger line to Putin, as you suggest, perhaps this war could have been avoided.
I do think we should have done more. And the real problem is with Ukraine that Putin does not yet believe, or he has not yet been convinced, that the West regards it as an overwhelming strategic objective for Ukraine to be a free and independent European country.
Do you think that the UK and its Western allies have been too slow and too cautious in giving President Zelensky what he's asking for?
If you're in Kyiv, then this feels like incrementalism. It feels like it's too slow, and it's deeply frustrating. And those tensions have existed all the way through.
Has that Western caution cost lives and prolonged the conflict?
Of course. I think we've always delayed needlessly. We've then ended up giving the Ukrainians what they've been asking for, and actually it's always served to their advantage and to the disadvantage of Putin. I mean, the one person who suffers from escalation is Putin. What we're doing, I'm afraid, is continually giving the Ukrainians too late just enough to stop them from losing, but not enough to help them bring the war to a successful conclusion for Ukraine. That's the problem.
What should then that help be? I mean, you're arguing for something more dramatic, more radical to bring this to a close.
You need to flip a switch in Putin's brain. So he really thinks, actually, the outcome of this war is going to be, I may hold on de facto to some of the land that I've taken, but the outcome is going to be a free, sovereign, independent, westward-facing Ukraine. But he's nowhere near that yet. And to get him into that position, I think we need to show that we're willing to give the Ukrainians the military support. I think that we need to impound his shadow fleet. And I think you need to do much more on the financial support for Ukraine.
But you've also written in the last week that there should be boots on the ground European forces in Ukraine, not to fight, but to show intent. Yes. Why? Because some people are going to hear that and think, hang on, we don't want to get involved in anything like that. That's going too far.
If we're going to have a plan for boots on the ground, I may be going in advance of a lot of thinking in the UK at the moment. But if we're going to have a plan for boots on the ground after the war, after Putin has condescended to have a ceasefire, then why not do it now? Just to make this point that it is up to the Ukrainians. I mean, these people wouldn't be there in a war-fighting capacity, right?
To be clear, you're saying that right now that UK military forces and from other European countries should go to Ukraine, to safe parts of Ukraine, to make a statement, to flip that switch, as you've said, in Vladimir Putin's head, showing intent.
Why not do it now? There's no logical reason that I can see why we shouldn't send some peaceful ground forces there to show our support, our constitutional support for a free, independent Ukraine. That this is a political thing. It's about whether Ukraine is a free country or not. If it's a vassal state of Russia, which is what Putin wants, then obviously it's up to Putin to decide who comes to his country. If it's not, then it's up to the Ukrainians.
How important has President Zelensky's leadership been to the Ukrainians being able to fight this far?
It's been utterly pivotal. I think he's been incredible.
I mean, Zelensky has done an extraordinary job of marshalling his country and galvanizing Western support. But it's the heroes are the people of Ukraine.
Is President Zelensky, though, the leader who could really bring this to an end? Not just because he's so associated with the conflict, but also because he's faced allegations of corruption in his government. Is he the man who actually is the right person to be able to bring this to an end?
Well, I don't think it's for me to, go into Ukrainian politics, particularly, except to say that I think Volodymyr Zelensky, has done an amazing job, and I think he's an incredible leader, and I think that as long as he's the duly elected leader of the Ukrainian people, he deserves our complete encouragement and support.
But this war is in a dreadful stalemate, and if Western allies are not willing to step up in the way that you two would like to see, maybe it is time for him to accept some form of concessions. Can you see that happening?
But President Zelensky has already agreed to in effect, a conditional, an unconditional ceasefire. Yeah. It's Putin that just continues, and Putin will not change until the calculus is adjusted. It's about getting Putin to the table, because President Zelensky is already there and waiting.
Is the White House too weak in forcing him to the table?
Well, I think that we, as I've said, I think that we all are, and yes, I certainly think that. Sadly, I think there is a delusion in the United States if they think that Putin wants peace. Tony is absolutely right.
Have you told Donald Trump that?
Of course, but I don't think that.
You've told him he's deluded?
I don't think that we will fix this thing, and I don't think we will end the war by asking the Ukrainians to make, as I think you were saying, to make further concessions. I mean, I don't think you should underestimate how much the Ukrainians want peace, and really, and actually how flexible they're willing to be. The way to end this thing is finally, psychologically, to convince Putin that he made a strategic category error in thinking that he could simply reabsorb Ukraine into the Soviet empire, that has failed. I think you would agree with that, Tony. It has failed.
It has also prompted a huge conversation here about how much we spend on defence. Now, Sir Tony, I know you've welcomed the government's decision to spend more money on defence, but everyone watching knows that ministers in this country have not yet spelt out in black and white where all the money is going to come from for all this extra defence spending. How important is it to you that they spell out very quickly where the money is going to come from?
Well, we need to resolve the big decisions of last year. A momentous decision by the Prime Minister, which was to join NATO colleagues and to agree for an uplift of 3.5% by 2035. That, I don't think people have recognised how substantial that decision was. And now you're seeing that being debated. It needs to be resolved. Russia is weak but dangerous. We're safe as a country at the moment. We're a nuclear power. We're a member of NATO. We have America as our principal ally. But we need to invest in each of those in order to assure our nation that we will continue to be safe in the 2030s.
It has to happen.
Yes.
It has to happen quickly.
Yes, because we're under a commitment from NATO, and we've made that commitment, and NATO is challenging us. Where is our plan? And there is a requirement for the UK to provide more as part of this plan that keeps us safe as we step into the 2030s.
Boris Johnson, Sir Tony Radakin, thank you so much for speaking to us. Geordie, Boris Johnson certainly made himself very unpopular at home, but there was often praise for his handling of Ukraine. Do you think people will take seriously now that call for him for non-combat troops to go to Ukraine right now?
Laura, I think his comments are reckless and irresponsible. It's typical of an attention-seeking stance which he's become known for. To have unarmed British troops in Ukraine, they would be sitting ducks. Putin has shown he can attack almost anywhere in Ukraine. The idea that Johnson can flip a switch in Putin's mind is laughable. he would be better to concentrate talking to his friend, Donald Trump, to try to flip his switch in order to make Donald Trump support what NATO and Europe and Britain wants to do, to save these heroic people and to stop this awful invasion and make Russia retreat.
I mean, just overnight, there were 50 Russian missile attacks, 297 Russian drones attacking Ukraine just overnight. But the former head of NATO, Rasmussen, did make a similar call not so long ago, saying, Richard, actually, this could be time, this could be some kind of option. What did you make of what you heard?
I think the elephant in the room is what's happening in the United States. I think the old certainty we had that America would be an unfailing ally meeting its Article 5 obligations under NATO, that feels a bit uncertain to me. And that's why I think Keir Starmer's speech at Munich was so important. Europe needs to make a joint response to this, and I think we need to be more reintegrated into Europe for defence and also for economic reasons, I think. And when you do that, and if you can see you can offer some meaningful resistance to Putin's expansionist ambitions, maybe that's what will flip a switch in Putin's mind. I don't know how you flip a switch in Donald Trump's
Interesting,
mind.
Johnson didn't put troops at risk when he was Prime Minister. For him now to tell another Prime Minister to do that is really regrettable.
What about then, though, this question of defence spending? I mean, you hear there Sir Tony Radakin, who managed to persuade ministers that they were going to have to cough up more, but there is still this huge question, Joanne, about where all the extra cash is going to come for so Keir Starmer can meet his promise. And there'll be lots of people watching this morning as well thinking, I don't like the way all this is going. I don't want money to go into defence.
I think, first of all, it really matters to people about national security. And I think that is, being fully understood by the government. They've moved away from 2.6% on GDP towards 3%. But actually, I'm really pleased to hear that the government are also talking about where that will go. And actually, if they invest in defence spending, it also brings about secure jobs in the private sector, from the defence perspective. So actually, it can really bring some positives on the back of that situation.
And Richard, just found domestically, can you believe it's 4 years?
I mean, I'd much rather be sitting here saying we should beat swords into ploughshares, but there are moments when you have to beat ploughshares into swords. It's a critical moment, I think. Greatest respect for Zelensky and the resilience and extraordinary courage of the Ukrainian people, and long may that continue.
OK. Well, you've been busy getting in touch too on our stories today, particularly about plans for special needs education. Gina, a teacher of 25 years, thinks the government's plans are unrealistic. She said, how on earth are we meant to deliver this? Come and teach for a term in a primary school and tell me your plans are realistic. Sally, though, is not very impressed with what the Tories have to say about student finance. She said it is not for the government to decide which degrees should be scrapped. Well, we love hearing your views, so do keep them coming in. Thank you to all of our guests. I'll get my words out straight today. And thank you, of course, most of all to you for spending your Sunday morning with us. The shake-up to education will be revealed in full by Bridget Phillipson tomorrow in Parliament. But she did tell us today that children will have their provision reviewed. Do also go to iPlayer or BBC Sounds if you want to watch or listen to a longer version of our conversation with the former Chief of the Defence Staff, Admiral Sir Tony Radakin, and the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. And next week, we will hear from the rebel dame, Tracey Emin. We spoke to her this week, right beside her world-famous bed. So don't miss that chat. It's really interesting. And I, of course, will look forward to seeing you then with Tracey Emin and our other guests that time, same time, same place.